The evening air in Portland felt cool and calm as Emily Carter stood by the kitchen window, watching the sky slowly turn orange and purple. The day had been ordinary, like most days in her life now. Work, dinner, a short walk, then quiet time. At home, for many people, that kind of life would feel peaceful. But lately, Emily had started noticing something missing. Not love, not comfort, just a certain spark that once lived in her marriage. Emily was 46 years old, thoughtful, and the kind of woman who noticed small details. She remembered birthdays, favorite songs, and the exact way Daniel liked his coffee. She had spent more than 20 years building a life with him. Through job changes, raising children, and the ups and downs of adulthood, they had stayed together. Daniel Carter was a calm man, steady and honest. He worked as an architect and loved designing homes that felt warm and welcoming. People trusted him because he listened carefully before speaking. That was one of the reasons Emily fell in love with him many years ago, but in recent months, Emily had noticed a quiet change in him. Daniel had become more thoughtful than usual. Sometimes she would catch him looking at her with a strange mix of love and worry, as if he was trying to decide whether to say something important. At first, Emily assumed it was work stress or maybe just the feeling people get when life moves into a new stage. Their children were now living on their own. The house felt larger and quieter than before. That evening, Emily placed 2 plates on the table and called out, "Dinner's ready." Daniel walked into the kitchen a moment later, loosening his tie. He smiled at her, but the smile looked slightly nervous. They sat down and began eating, talking about small things: the weather, a neighbor's new dog, a funny story Daniel had heard at work. Everything felt normal. But Emily could sense something beneath the surface. After dinner, Daniel stayed seated instead of getting up like he usually did. He folded his hands on the table and looked at Emily. "Can we talk for a minute?" he asked. Emily leaned back slightly, curious. "Of course." Daniel took a slow breath. "There's something on my mind," he said. Emily studied his. "You've been wanting to say something for a while." Daniel smiled a little. "You know me too well." For a few seconds, he didn't speak. "Okay." Emily could see he was choosing his words carefully. "Been thinking about our life." Emily waited. "We've built something really good," Daniel continued. "I'm proud of us. Most people never get what we have. But lately," he said, "I've been wondering if we've stopped discovering new parts of life." Emily didn't interrupt. She understood what he meant, even if he hadn't fully explained it yet. Daniel looked down briefly, then back at her. "I don't want our life to become only routine," he said. "That does sound like us these days." Daniel laughed quietly. Emily raised an eyebrow with playful curiosity. "A wish." "Yes. Okay," she said. "Now I'm interested." Daniel hesitated again, which made Emily realize this wasn't a simple request. Emily's heart slowed for a moment. She didn't react immediately, but she felt a small wave of surprise. Daniel noticed and quickly spoke again. "It's not what you think. I promise." Emily nodded slowly. "Then explain." Daniel relaxed a little when he saw she was willing to listen. "There's a bookstore downtown I sometimes visit during lunch," he said. "A few weeks ago, I started talking to someone. She's easy to talk to," Daniel continued. "So why are you telling me this like it's important?" Daniel leaned forward slightly. "Because the conversation made me realize something," he said. "I miss meeting new people, learning new stories, feeling curious again." Yes, that was not what Emily expected. For a moment, she simply looked at him, trying to understand what he meant. "I want us to share the experience." "You want to meet another woman with me," she said slowly. "I don't want that. I want transparency." Emily noticed how serious he was. This was not a joke. Daniel stayed quiet, giving her space. After a moment, she turned around. "Daniel," answered. But Daniel had always been someone who spoke the truth, even when it was uncomfortable. "What exactly are you hoping will happen?" she asked. "Maybe we'll just have a conversation and nothing more." Us that the world is bigger than our routine. Part of her felt unsure. Another part felt strangely awake. Emily asked. Daniel nodded. Yes, I told her I'm married. I told her about you. And she didn't think. That was strange. Daniel smiled a little. There, road trips across the US and Canada. The excitement of building a life from nothing. Between us, Emily asked softly. Daniel answered without hesitation. Then we face it together. Emily looked into his eyes and saw the same man she married years ago. But now there was something new and honest. She didn't give him an answer that night. Later, they went to bed, but Emily stayed awake longer than usual, staring at the ceiling. Confusion, curiosity, a little. Fear and something unexpected. Excitement? She wondered who Claire was. What kind of person made Daniel think about life differently? The next morning, sunlight filled the kitchen as Emily made coffee. Daniel walked in, looking slightly unsure, as if he was worried about how she felt after the conversation. Emily handed him a mug. He hesitated. About last night, Emily interrupted gently. Tell me more about Claire. Daniel looked surprised. Really? Emily nodded. Yes. If this is something we're going to consider, I want to understand it. Daniel sat down at the table, relief slowly appearing. Emily smiled slightly. You like people who listen. That's true, Daniel admitted. She wasn't agreeing yet, but she also wasn't saying no. And in that quiet moment, something began to change between them, something subtle but powerful. Because sometimes a marriage doesn't grow by staying the same. 3 days after that conversation, Emily and Daniel walked side by side down a quiet street in Portland. The afternoon sun was soft, and a cool breeze moved through the trees. The bookstore was only a few blocks away, but the walk felt longer than usual. Emily could feel a quiet energy inside her, something between excitement and uncertainty. Daniel looked calm, but she knew him well enough to see the nervousness in the way he kept adjusting his jacket. Neither of them spoke much at first. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was simply the silence of two people stepping into something new. Finally, Daniel said softly, If you change your mind, we can turn around. Emily shook her head. No, she said. I want to see where this goes. Daniel smiled, relieved, but still thoughtful. Thank you for trusting me. They reached the bookstore a few minutes later. The place looked warm and inviting from the outside. Large windows showed shelves filled with books, soft lights, and a small coffee corner near the back. People inside were reading quietly or talking. In low voices, Emily took a small breath. Before opening the door, the sound of a bell rang as they stepped inside. The air smelled like coffee and paper. A comforting mix. Emily immediately noticed how peaceful the place felt. She could understand why Daniel liked coming there. Then she saw the woman behind the counter, Claire. Mitchell looked up from arranging books and smiled when she noticed Daniel. Her smile was natural, not surprised, as if she had expected this moment. She had calm eyes and a confident presence. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, and that made her seem even more genuine. Hi, Danielle, Claire said warmly. Danielle smiled back. Hi, Claire. Then he gestured toward Emily. This is Emily. Claire's expression softened in a friendly way. She walked around the counter and extended her hand. It's really nice to meet you, she said. Emily shook her hand and felt an unexpected sense of ease. You too, Emily replied. There was no awkward tension like Emily had imagined. Instead, it felt like meeting someone new in a normal situation, which surprised her. They moved to a small table near the window. The sunlight came through the glass, lighting the space in a warm way. Daniel offered to get coffee, but Claire insisted she would bring it since she worked there. While Claire went to the counter, Emily quietly watched the room. People reading, pages turning, quiet conversations. It was a calm place where time moved. Slower. Claire returned with 3 cups and sat down with them. So Claire said with a light smile, "This is happening." Daniel laughed a little. "Yes, it is." Emily appreciated the honesty in that moment. No pretending, no strange explanations. Just people acknowledging something unusual. At first, they talked about simple things. Claire asked about Emily's work, and Emily shared that she worked part-time at a local community center helping organize events. Claire seemed genuinely interested, asking thoughtful questions that made Emily feel comfortable opening up. Daniel relaxed as the conversation flowed. He told stories about architecture projects he was working on, including a small home design inspired by coastal towns in Canada. Claire shared that she had lived in Vancouver years ago before moving to Oregon. The conversation moved easily from topic to topic. Travel, favorite cities, books that changed their lives, music they loved when they were younger. Emily noticed something interesting. Daniel looked alive in a way she hadn't seen for a while. Not because of Claire alone, but because of the energy of the moment. It reminded her of how he used to be when they were younger, when everything felt new at one point. Claire said something that made Emily pause. "You two seem very connected." Claire said. Emily looked at Daniel and smiled slightly. "We've had a lot of practice." Claire laughed softly. "I can tell." After some time, Daniel stood up to grab more coffee. He wanted to give Emily space to talk with Claire alone for a moment. As he walked away, the table became quieter. Claire looked at Emily with gentle honesty. "I hope this doesn't feel strange," she said. Emily thought about the question carefully. "It's different," Emily replied, "but not in a bad way." Claire nodded, understanding. "When Daniel first told me about you," Claire said, "I was impressed. Those people would hide things like this." Emily appreciated that. "He doesn't like secrets," Emily said. "That's rare," Claire replied. Emily studied Claire for a moment. She was trying to understand who this woman was and why Daniel had been affected by their conversations. Claire seemed calm, thoughtful, and kind. She wasn't trying to compete with Emily or take anything away. Instead, she seemed curious about both of them. Daniel returned with the drinks, and the conversation continued. As time passed, Emily felt something she hadn't expected. She was enjoying herself. The three of them laughed several times. They shared stories about embarrassing moments, travel mistakes, and strange life experiences. The conversation felt natural and honest. Eventually, they stood up to leave. Before they walked out, Claire said, "I'd like to see you both again, if you're open to it." Emily looked at Daniel, then back at Claire. "I think that would be okay, Emily," said Dot. And that was the beginning. Over the next few weeks, they met several more times. Sometimes at the bookstore, sometimes at a cafe near the river, and once at a weekend market filled with music and food trucks. Each meeting revealed something new. Claire had a thoughtful way of looking at life. She asked questions that made both Emily and Daniel think deeper about things they had stopped noticing. One afternoon, while walking along the river, Claire asked Emily, "What did you dream about when you were younger?" Emily laughed at first, but then she realized it had been a long time since anyone asked her that. "I wanted to travel more," Emily said. "Maybe write stories someday." Daniel looked at her with surprise. "You never told me that," he said. Emily smiled gently. "I guess life got busy," Claire said. "It's never too late." That simple sentence stayed in Emily's mind. Something inside her began to wake up again. Daniel noticed the change too. Emily seemed lighter, more open, more expressive than before. One evening, after meeting Claire for coffee, Daniel and Emily walked home together under streetlights. "You seem happy," Daniel said to Emily. Looked at him. "I am," she admitted. "But it's not just because of Claire. It's because we're talking more again." Daniel nodded slowly. "That's what I hoped for." But as weeks passed, emotions slowly became more complicated. The friendship between the three of them grew stronger, but so did certain feelings they hadn't planned for. One evening, they sat together watching the sunset near the water. The sky was painted with deep colors, and the moment felt quiet and meaningful. Claire broke the silence. "I want to say something honestly," she said. Emily and Daniel both looked at her. "I didn't expect this," Claire continued. "When Daniel first talked to me at the bookstore, I thought it was just a conversation. Then I met you, Emily, and now I care about both of you." The words hung in the air. Emily felt her heart beat faster. Daniel didn't speak. Immediately, Claire wasn't dramatic when she said it. She was simply being honest. "I respect your marriage," Claire said gently, "but I can't ignore how much I enjoy being around you both." Emily glanced at Daniel. Their eyes met, and they shared a quiet understanding that this moment mattered. This was the point where things were no longer simple curiosity. Something real was growing. Emily took a slow breath. "Thank you for being honest," she said. Daniel nodded. Double quotes, "Yes," he added. "That means a lot." But inside, both Emily and Daniel realized something important. Daniel's wish had started as a small idea, to bring a little excitement back into their lives. Now, it had turned into something much deeper than either of them expected. Over the next few days, Emily spent a lot of time thinking. It's not because she felt threatened, but because emotions were changing in ways she needed to understand. She realized she didn't feel jealous in the way she thought she might. Instead, she felt curious about what this connection meant for all of them. When she spoke to Daniel about it, their conversation was calm and honest. "Are you scared?" Daniel asked, a little, Emily admitted, but also hopeful. Daniel smiled softly. "That's exactly how I feel." Meanwhile, Claire also thought deeply about the situation. She didn't want to hurt their marriage. She respected the bond they had built over decades, but she also couldn't deny the connection she felt with them. A few nights later, the three of them met again at the bookstore after closing time. The lights were softer and the place felt quiet and private. They sat together, talking about everything openly, not rushing, not forcing decisions, just being honest. And that honesty created something rare. Because sometimes love does not appear in expected shapes. Sometimes it grows slowly between people who choose truth over fear. That night, as they talked and laughed under the warm lights of the bookstore, Emily realized something surprising. Daniel's wish had not taken anything away from their marriage. Instead, it had opened a door they never knew existed. But deep down, Emily also understood something else. Once hearts begin to change and grow in new directions, there is always one question waiting ahead.